I think they've had a really poor week, the Swans, in the planning for this game.
But this is the big test for Dean Cox.
First game up, I think they've had a stinker.
Can be a brutal role, the coach of a senior coach of an AFL football club. In reality, coming thick and fast for Dean Cox. Night one, ahead of the Swans, Bucks. What would he be feeling? Why would anyone want to be a coach?
Good question. Geez, Kingy went hard, didn't he? He said a stinker.
Do you have a stinker after your first game?
Did you see it was a...
Played Hawthorn. I played 5 first game players. That was a stinker decision. I think, look, I thought Dean Cox actually and the coaches made some really good adjustments in game that gave them a chance to win it. You know, at three-quarter time, the scores were pretty close to level, and the game was up for grabs. I thought Jordan to Day was obvious. Hayward to Sicily worked really well. And the other one, that with Jordan going in, Warner needed to go somewhere, or a mid needed to go somewhere. He went forward and looked quite dangerous in the run of play.
Can't do much more.
I thought Hawthorn's performance was excellent. So you give them, so you can't give them their flowers and then say that Sydney were really poor. Right? They weren't really poor. The McCartan-Blakey discussion we'll have, but Patton lost 2 contests inside D50 for 2 goals in the first quarter. And Sheldrick had a moment there. There's 3 goals. That was the margin. So you can say that their younger players didn't quite seize the moments and that was the difference in the game. So I think that's going a bit too far to be too critical after one game.
How big is the jump from assistant coach to senior coach? Because I can remember Damien Harvick telling me, you never know until you're in the driver's seat what it feels like. Is this now a learning curve for Dean Cox to go, well, I've sat next to John Longmire, who is still in the building at the Swans. I have to figure it out my own way?
Yeah, well, if you want to know what it feels like, go and have a look at Dean Cox's face when Ollie Florent tries to switch the ball and kicks it straight to Connor McDonald, like in the last quarter. I mean, that's where he wasn't expecting that, and that's where, oh my God, that's something we need to coach out of him, and it has a profound impact on the game. So I did ask him that question before he went in, and I think it doesn't really matter what you think you know. It's not until you've been in the chair until you actually start to understand. And this week becomes Dean Cox's greatest challenge. It's a great challenge. Well, it's not about the opponent. It's just about how do you handle last week? How do you handle the criticism that's quite clearly coming his way? Now, I reckon early days as a coach, you probably listen to that a little bit more than you do later on. It's a fascinating case study, but the challenge is still before Sydney, and he's got to coach as positively as he possibly can. One
of the moves you can pull when you're senior coach is throwing your key back forward. We saw Tom McCartan go forward. Geordie, what did you think of this?
Well, for me, it's a watch. I mean, we spoke about this pre-game. They're not blessed with key position defenders, so they're taking a solid. I think can be an A-grade defender and putting him forward. And he justified that by being, he's great in the forward line to sort of instruct and get players set up. But for me, their intercept game clearly suffered. I think they only took 6 intercept marks, which is their lowest since 2022. So it's not only that, it's the repositioning of other players whose primary role is to maybe be attacking. And you sort of speak about Nick Blakey. Now, he was clearly not the attacking player that we know. He would usually take that kick and just go whoosh. And then what that does is causes instability further up the field. That means a Hawthorn player's got to come forward, and then there's a cascading effect. He has to now play on Marby-Olchol. So he is the deepest Sydney player. And as you see, this ball get switched and then get transferred back down the field. He cannot leave Marby-Olchol. 1, because Hawthorn have got the ball. But 2, he is the key position play that he needs to be because McCartan's not there. He's now a forward. So for me, it's just a watch. And I don't think it's... you can't go against saying, hey, it didn't work in the first 4 weeks, let's swap them back. But Nick Blakey wasn't the aggressive type of player that we've seen in the past.
How does Dean Cox make this work, Brownie?
No, he's got to hold his nerve, I think, with Tom McCartan. I think he's a competitor, McCartan, and I think you've got to add a dynamic forward to their forward line, which he is. Amadi and McLean feel like more in the style of a ruckman. McLean obviously didn't play. Amadi's building up as a key forward. Logan McDonald, I think. Logan McDonald back. He's trained some time there.
Back into the forward line.
No, Logan McDonald as a defender.
I don't mind that.
So go back. Right. He's played back there. He's done some time there training there over the pre-season as a defender. So when he's ready to go, if it's this Saturday, get him as a defender. I think hold your nerve as Tom McCartan. I just don't think they've got enough in front of the ball without Tom McCartan.
You don't think McDonald's a forward?
No, I think for what they need at the moment, I think he can be a really good defender. I think he reads the ball really well. At the moment, he's been a pseudo flanker. He's not a big key position. He's not a big man, and he's not a big pack crusher. So I think he can be better used behind the ball. They've got Malikan, they've got Rampy, and then you can see Blakey start to get back into that role that you're talking about.
Well, for this week alone, if McDonald isn't available and McLean aren't available, McCartan needed to play forward because they're playing against Barras, so the intercept markers, they had 22 as it was. They would have had 52 if it hadn't have been for potentially having a player like McCartan
and kicked 4
who could
against
compete.
the Suns the week before too. He looked really good as a key forward.
Once again, just let it go for another couple of weeks.
Yeah, not questioning his importance.
Yeah.
You'd love him at either end, no doubt. But I think just what you lose out of the back end, now with Goulden out and Blakey being deeper, you just lose that drive.
Blakey had 26 touches, 11 of them were play on from kick-outs. So you take those out, it's 15 touches. He only had that one inside 50, which was the goal he kicked when he decided, I've got to make something happen here and I'll get up. So I don't think you can argue. I can't argue with you. Blakey was deeper and he wasn't as much of an offensive threat through the middle of the ground.
I'll talk about the battle of the salaries in the middle of the ground. Brodie Grundy versus Lloyd Meek. It's a fantastic battle, and Meek was the third highest rated player on the ground. What's a ruckman worth these days, do you reckon?
Everything. Well, this is his follow-up after his second goal in the second quarter. And if we're talking about where the game was won or lost, like Hawthorn dominated clearance in the first half, and they gave their forwards first supply. They put the Sydney back 6 under extreme pressure. So Tom McCartan, Nick Blakey, whatever you're looking at, they basically got smashed out of the middle. And that was a large part of Hawthorn having the game on their terms.
He's good, Meek. You know, he resembles David Hale when he came over.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's a lot of similarities for me. The great Hawthorn side that you played in, Geordie, the one 3 in a row. A lot of similarities the way Mitch has built that team, probably without the big firepower with Roughhead and Franklin forward. But their kicking game's magnificent. Got some tough boys in the middle. You're one of those boys that is supported by those flankers that come up and run. They kick really well. And then, Barras and Battle are like Lake and Gibson coming in as free agents. So a lot of similarities.
Do you see that, Geordie?
You think about yours. Sorry, you've had McDonald, Keating, Sharman. All of those guys. You don't waste an early pick on a ruckman. There's Nankervis was a great example. Second, third club. You can find a ruckman from elsewhere. That's where Lord Meeks come from. That's where Darcy Cameron's come from. I think that. How do you judge big units at 17, 18? It's hard enough to judge a midfielder at 17, 18, let alone a bloke who's 6'8", and how they're going to develop. You can't really pick those guys until they're 25.
I think you're right. I think, Damien Hardwick said about the Gold Coast, 80% is there. So I think there's a large chunk of your list that you need to get through the draft, no doubt. But I think what Mitch has done and what the Hawthorn recruiting staff have done have specifically gone after certain people, and it helps when you're winning, to try and attract Battle and Barras. It helps when the Hawks had the year they had last night. But players like Lloyd Meek are absolute gold because you pay them well, but you don't pay them overs. But the output is far and above what you could expect.